We celebrate this Veterans Day for a very few minutes, a few seconds of silence, and then this country's life goes on. But I think it most appropriate that we recall on this occasion and on every other moment when we are faced with great responsibilities, the contribution and the sacrifice which so many men and their families have made in order to permit this country to now occupy its present position of responsibility and freedom, and in order to permit us to gather here together.
My name is Lee Denny.
My name is Sean Haas.
My name is Jeff Banks.
My name is Mark Elliott.
My name is Brad Phillips.
My name is Wayne Thomas. I'm the business teacher at LaVille Jr-Sr High.
My unit was the 1st Battalion of the 325th Airborne Infantry Regiment, part of the 82nd Airborne Division.
I was stationed on board the USS Alaska, SSBN 732. It's a submarine.
416th Engineer Group, and we were attached to the 10th Mountain Division.
I served in Fort Bragg with the 82nd Airborne.
I was part of the 5th Battalion, 7th Air Defense Artillery, and we were based out of Hanau, Germany and Babenhausen, Germany.
I was in called the United States Air Force Security Service.
Honestly, it was a way to go to college for me at first. Didn't have a solid plan for after high school, and they approached me, and I saw the reasoning and the logic behind serving.
I joined for the college money, but was roped into a war.
I joined the Navy because when I was in high school, there was a horrible attack against America in 2001, and I knew that everyone needed to do their part. And so I worked to find out what my part was and do it.
I joined the military because I felt called to serve my country. Really, it was just a patriotic thing. I felt like I would have regretted not doing it because I was more than able and capable to do it. I decided to do Airborne because I wanted to be as elite as I could, be the best I could at whatever I'm doing. So I was offered that opportunity and I jumped at it. While I went to college, I felt like in my family it was just the normal thing to do. Everybody goes to college and gets a degree. At that point, I had thought a little bit about joining the Army, but hadn't really given it serious consideration. And then throughout college, I just felt more and more called that that was something that I needed to do.
Again, everyone kind of had their own part that they needed to fill, and I found that I was most suited for joining the Navy with my specific skills. They offered to pay me more to go on board a submarine.
Well, both of my parents served in the Navy, and of course I went to the Navy recruiter first, and with my scores and athletic ability in high school, he thought that I would make a good SEAL, which what 17-year-old wouldn't want to do SEAL training. And then he mentioned that I would be shot out of a torpedo tube, and that just did not sound pleasing, and I walked out of the interview and found the Army recruiter. My family serves all the way back through at least my great-great-grandfather. There's someone in every generation of my family that served, including immigrants that had moved here from England, having service in Her Majesty's 9th Royal Lancers.
I don't know, I joined the Army because I didn't really like the ocean, and I wasn't that interested in flying, so it seemed like the way to go.
That's a pretty good story, actually. I think I knew I was going to join the military while I was still in high school, and that was pretty obvious. The ironic thing is I wanted to join the Air Force, but that recruiting station was out to lunch, and I wasn't going to join the Marines because that just seemed really hard. So the Army guys were still there, so I went in there, and that's the branch that I joined.
I took the Armed Forces exam, and they gave me about 3 choices, and the Morse code operator job would assign me to bases overseas most of my 4 years, and I was anxious to get overseas, so I volunteered for that.
I had my only family members that were in the military previously were my grandparents in World War II, and they were both in the Army. And then I had a couple friends that also joined, and they joined the Army too, so that was really the only branch that I considered.
I have a lot of family members that were in the military. Most of them were all in the Army. My grandfathers were both in the United States Army, One of them actually served in World War II, stormed the beaches.
I actually did not deploy overseas. My unit was on what's called Global Reaction Force, and it's just a constant state of readiness. So at any point, if we got a call saying we needed to go somewhere, anywhere in the world, we would be on a plane 2 hours later heading there. So our bags were constantly packed, ready to go, but we actually didn't ever get a call.
Well, my home base while I was active was in Hanau, Germany, in Babenhausen. We were deployed to Israel for an exercise, and then we were also deployed to northern Iraq and Turkey area during Operation Iraqi Freedom.
On the submarine, no one actually has any clue where we were at any given time. It's all very top secret. But they did offer to let me see the world, and I didn't see a single thing. However, they did let me see all of America. So I went from Connecticut to Washington State, Hawaii, California, the Panama Canal, Florida, Virginia, and then Georgia, all within 5 years. And they even paid me to drive from Washington State to Virginia at one period of time.
Well, I went to basic training in San Antonio for 6 weeks. I was in Biloxi, Mississippi for 21 weeks learning Morse code. I was stationed in Misawa, Japan for 18 months, 72 and 73. Udon, Thailand was supposed to be 12 months, but when we pulled out of Vietnam, Thailand kicked us out, so my tour was cut by 4 months. So I went back to Kelly Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. And when Turkey invaded Cyprus in '74, my skill was needed in San Vito, Italy, and I volunteered and was there 4 months. And then I went back to San Antonio and finished my 4 years.
I was deployed to Kuwait and Iraq, and as well as various stateside deployments.
I deployed to Afghanistan in 2003.
Well, first of all, I'd never been out of Indiana until I went in the service. My parents were divorced and my mom didn't have any money. So going to Mississippi and going to Texas was great, but when I went to Japan and seeing a whole different culture, that had a major effect on me. And all the other places I went to, I think that's one of the reasons I like geography so much.
You read about third world countries and you see a lot about them, but you really don't understand how differently most of the world lives from how we live. We have homes and we spend a lot of time in our houses, and you go to most of the world and they have a place they go to sleep or when the weather's really bad outside. But in Afghanistan, they lived in mud huts, so it's not someplace you'd want to spend any time at all. And most of the world is like that. Most of the world lives outside all the time.
Yeah, it wasn't fun because you can't go out, you can't go explore on the weekends, you can't go more than a half hour away. You always have to be close by, ready to go. So it kind of limited you on things that you could do. But it was exciting just having that kind of in the back of your head that no matter what you're doing, if you're in the middle of anything, you could have to stop and go and be heading somewhere in the world.
The temperature, it was hot. I had been in places that were warm before, but deserts of Southwest Asia kind of are a little bit hotter than anything I expected, and it was very bright, much brighter than I expected as well.
Well, my first deployment was to Kuwait, so not necessarily what you would consider a combat zone, but when you step off that tarmac, onto the tarmac off the plane, you realize for the first time as a 17, 18-year-old kid that you're in a completely different world than what you're used to.
The thing I remember most about my first deployment was I'd only been on board the boat for about 2 weeks, and they came looking for me and they said, "Thomas, we've been searching for you everywhere. There you are, we have a job just for you." And I was excited, my head got huge, my ego was overinflated at this point. And they walked me down to the very front of the boat, and there was this small little hole that no one else could fit in. And they said, "Someone has to crawl down there and scrape off all of the old paint and put new paint down to check for rust, and no one else will fit." And that's about the time that I realized everyone does have a role to play, and it was a big team, and every cog had to do its job in order to make things work.
Well, staying in touch with your family is definitely a lot different than it was 50 years ago when you had to write a letter, wait 3 months, hope you're still in the same spot when it gets back to you. In the 21st century, we have Skype and and FaceTime. And so really I spoke with my family almost on a daily basis. With the time delay, often that meant that I had to stay up or get up early, oftentimes only resulting in 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night, but it was a lot more manageable than one would think.
It wasn't Skype and it wasn't emails, that's for sure. It's writing letters, that was it. So I'd get a letter about every 2 or 3 weeks from home. And that was pretty, we would make tapes, cassette tapes, and I would record a tape and send that to my mom, and then she'd record it and send it back.
Staying in touch was very difficult, and it's something we take for granted today with Facebook, but we weren't able to do that. You couldn't even write letters. For some reason, your cell phone doesn't work 700 feet underwater. And so we could email back and forth, but even that was a process that would take 2, maybe 3 weeks before you actually heard anything back in regards to the one you sent. So basically you pray a lot and hope that everything's going all right when you come back home in 3 months.
When we first got there, it was not very easy to get in touch back at home. As we spent more time there, they got a lot more internet connections and stuff like that. So we did have the ability to send emails and stuff like that, and we could also call at night. The reason we called at night is because of the time difference. But it was kind of weird talking because there was a big time delay between when you said something and when they heard it. So you kind of had to learn to talk on the phone in a different way.
The submarine I was on actually had a really unique setup where you would go out for 3 months on deployment, and that's the hard time where you don't have cell phones, there's no real Facebook or email or anything like that. In turn, when you came back in, you gave the boat to someone else, a separate crew. And while they were out to sea, you trained for those 3 months, and you went to school every day. But in turn, you got to see your family and talk to them every day. And so that really made the whole thing a little bit easier to handle, as opposed to another submarine. They go out for 6 months at a time, but they go out and they come back in every couple weeks to a different port. We didn't have any port calls, but we also had a couple months off.
It was pretty easy. I mean, phones for the most part were pretty readily available. We did have to write letters once in a while if we were farther away from the post, but it was pretty easy to communicate with people back here.
It wasn't too bad. Obviously, with the internet these days, you can constantly talk to them or video chat or whatever. And they gave us plenty of free time. We'd get 4-day weekends where I would go home every month or two and stay in touch pretty easily.
Yes, I was in combat in Iraq and Kuwait. Well, it's definitely not like Hollywood glamorizes it, even when they try to get the more human and stressful or damaging side of it, that they still manage to miss the mark.
We were at Bagram, and different people had different feelings about it. When we first flew in, the plane really had to go, all the planes going in went through a lot of maneuvers because they were afraid they'd get shot down by a Scud or whatever. It never bothered me when we had the missiles coming in, it never really bothered me. You know, it was one of those things I sort of felt like it was either going to be really bad and you'd never know it, or nothing was going to happen to you at all. But some people really had a lot of problems with it. So it just sort of depended on the person, I guess.
The nuclear submarine I was on serves as a nuclear deterrent. And so we don't actually go into combat. We're there kind of as a last-ditch effort if anyone were to attack us.
The thing I remember most about combat is being thankful that I wasn't anywhere near it. Being attached to an Air Force base, we were very far removed from the fighting, and so I'm thankful every day that I wasn't down there on the front lines, risking my life, as it were.
We did have constant training. Vigilance is paramount was the key phrase that they really drilled home during my 5 years. And so we went through training on every possible scenario that could happen. Fires, because on board a submarine it'll eat up your atmosphere. Flooding, for obvious reasons. What to do if you're in a crash. And they teach everyone all of these different roles so that everyone's capable of putting it out. They don't have any one guy in charge of anything. Everyone serves their part.
I went in October, on my mom's birthday, October 7th, 1971, and I got out October 6, 1975. After getting out of the service, I went back to Ball State, my hometown, and I was going to be an environmental lawyer. And so I started majoring in political science and in environmental science. And then I got married, and the law school kind of went by the wayside. So I became a teacher.
I'd say the adjustment was pretty normal. It wasn't too shell-shocking getting out of the military. And being that I went to college to be a teacher before I joined the military, I think that kind of helped me expect or know what to expect when I got out.
You know, coming home from a combat zone, there's a lot of relief. The Army has spent a lot of time in recent years making sure the transition from combat to the civilian life is a lot smoother, and they've done an excellent job with that, and so the transition was fairly smooth.
It was a little bit of an adjustment. I mean, not like an adjustment in that I was traumatized or anything. It was just a different type of living. You get used to something for a number of years, and then all of a sudden you kind of have total independence and freedom. So it was a bit of an adjustment coming back, leaving military life and actually becoming a civilian. But I had a lot of fun adjusting.
Well, other than my deployment, I got to spend most of my time with my family. So just for the deployment, you know, it was kind of tough. I had 2 daughters at the time. One was 3 years old, one was 8 years old. So for my 3-year-old, I was missing a lot of her growing up. And for my 8-year-old, she had a hard time with it because she would hear stuff on the news about the war and it really bothered her. So it bothered me not being with her during that time. And when you have kids, I really like my kids, so I like spending a lot of time with them. And so I missed them a lot, and it was really good to be home and to see them again.
I always tell my seniors, I don't want to hear anybody say you can't go to college. If you want to go in the service, they'll pay for your college.
The GI Bill was wonderful, and it actually got upgraded while I was in the Navy. And it was a huge part of why I decided to get out and go back to school. And so it paid to not only get my bachelor's degree in business management, but it also paid to let me get my master's degree in Christian leadership. And I didn't end up paying anything. I actually made money going through college.
Right, so I opted out of the GI Bill because they offered a student loan repayment program where they paid $65,000 of the loans that I already had that I went to college to use. So instead of getting that money after the military, I used it to pay off the loans that I already had.
While I was in, I got a 4-year degree as an engineer, and then when I got out and decided I wanted to be a teacher, I had to go back and get another degree. It took me about 2 years, and the GI Bill paid for a good chunk of that. I was able to not work and go to school full time, which made it a lot easier.
I did use the GI Bill to get my bachelor's degree, so it was quite nice being able to walk away from college with virtually no debt.
Yeah, both. GI Bill paid for most of my college, which I was pretty thankful for. Not a lot of people can get out of college debt-free. So that was one of the biggest draws to join the military in the first place, was to go to college.
So I had people I was stationed with in Japan that got a year of college education through correspondence courses, and now with computers, you can take online courses and get a lot of credits out of the way.
I think my experience absolutely shaped how I think about war and the military. Despite being raised in a very conservative family that had strong feelings towards the military, I can absolutely, without a doubt, say that my feelings are much stronger. It's not something I considered as a kid, and yet it is something that I want my own children to consider as they reach the age of adulthood and are looking at college and beyond.
I think it gave me a greater respect for the military. I mean, even though I wasn't in a combat MOS, I developed a pretty good appreciation for the people that did those types of jobs. And I don't think I would have gotten that type of, I wouldn't have that type of respect for the military had I not gone through it.
Yeah, it does. You know, I don't know if you've seen the movie about Benghazi, where those guys were there, and it's not really from my perspective, but I've known a lot of people in the military since I was in there, and I've known people that have died. And you know, when politicians say go and fight for your country, I don't have a problem with that, but they really need to support the people that are there, and you know, and not hang them out to dry. You know, so that really bothers me sometimes when I see. It seems like people are committing American lives without really understanding the gravity of what they're doing.
Yes, it did. Because again, when we picture war, we always look at what we see on the movies or on TV shows. But the real thing is, everyone really does have a part. Every branch has its part, but the most forgotten people are those who are at home, the family members, the wives, the sisters, the brothers, and the dads, and the moms, who are all at home, worried about their kids, doing what they can to send them letters, which really is the biggest morale boost any of them could get. I think those are the real forgotten soldiers.
I'm a patriot, okay? I love my country. When I was in the service, I just covered this with my government students, the first president I ever voted for was Richard Nixon, absentee ballot when I was in Japan. Okay, that was the Watergate presidency. So the first president I ever voted for resigned in office, okay? But it definitely shaped. As I look back now, I'm not a pacifist. I'm for a strong military, but I think we could be smarter in our military and not waste so much.
I think what you miss most are the people, the men and women that you served with every day, doing the same things day in, day out. Going through the same crap, as it were. Those are the things that I miss the most. Not necessarily any task or anything that was specific. I miss the people I was with.
It was just the camaraderie. I met friends from all over the country that we were stationed with, and we traveled. It was great. It's 4 of the best years of my life being in the service. But I wasn't dodging bullets and rice paddies in Vietnam either, or in Iraq or Afghanistan with bombs going off, blowing up my vehicle I was driving. So my experience was a little different because I wasn't in a war zone.
I miss being able to speak your mind. The emotional side was really cut off because you were at work and you left all of your feelings at the pier. But I also miss the brotherhood and the camaraderie that we had, because it's not like you could just run away if you didn't like someone. You had to hash it out, talk about whatever your problem was, and get back to work. But you all became family. Family from Oklahoma and Michigan and Virginia and all over the entire nation were your brothers. And I kind of miss that the most.
Definitely the camaraderie, the friendships that you build, even only being in that short time there. Some of my best friends are still in the Army. Also, breakfast was really good.
I think what I miss the most about serving is the camaraderie, the natural sense of brotherhood that we have. And you still get that a little bit today. I mean, we all are on Facebook and we see each other on social media sites. And when one of us needs something, one of our fellow servicemen is always there for them.
You know, I don't really miss that much about it because I did it for 20 years, and when I was ready to go, I was ready to go. I have a lot of great memories from it and got to do a lot of cool things that I'm glad I did, and I wouldn't give that stuff up. So, but when I was ready to go, it was time to move on to something else.
I do not miss moving at all. I probably had about 13 addresses in a 2-year span due to all the different duty stations I had and the changes in deployment or what have you. And I definitely enjoy now owning my own house and knowing that that's going to be my address for 30 years as opposed to a couple months.
I would say the thing that I missed least about being in the Army would just be when we were on that constant state of readiness, really kind of limited what we could do and limited visits home and stuff like that. So that was probably the hardest part of being in.
Honestly, nothing. I'd love to go back, but my wife won't let me.
Hurry up and wait. That was what the military always said. It'd always get you there, and then you'd end up waiting a long time before you did what they told you needed to do.
Boy, you know, I don't really have any regrets about it. It was all, you know, at the time it might have been tough or something you'd want to avoid, but after doing it, there was really nothing that was that bad.
I would just say that it's definitely something that at times wasn't fun, but had I not done it, I would definitely regret not doing it.
Do it. I mean, but be prepared. I think I was unprepared in a sense when I went to basic training. Just understand the challenge that you're going to face is going to be very large, and hopefully you can get through it, but you'll need help. So just make sure you're prepared is my best advice.
Usually my response is very positive. So many students and young teens nowadays don't think that the military is right for them, and I really think with so much available, so many opportunities, that a lot of young kids would really be surprised on what a good fit the military is for them.
Well, I think service in the military is great. It teaches you a lot. It helps you grow up and grow up in the right way. And I also think it's just like everything else in life. To be successful in life or in the military, anything you should do, you should put everything into it. So if you're going to serve in the military, give it 100%. Enjoy the time you're there and learn as much as you can.
I would tell them to look at every branch: Armies, the Marines, the Navy, the Coast Guard, the Air Force, and figure out which one they are a best fit for, because each one really does have skill sets they're looking for, and you need to find what you're good at, what you have to offer. But I think everyone should do what they can to help keep our country where it is.
I'd do it all over again.
I would say that most veterans don't do it for glory or fame, or veterans appreciate being recognized, but I would say when you think about Veterans Day or Memorial Day even, think about the great things that are offered to you just by being an American. So veterans fight for those freedoms, so on those days, Veterans Day or Memorial Day, really take time to appreciate the freedoms that they fight for.
You know, that's always an interesting question. With my particular years in service, you know, I did do some stateside deployments where I served in a drug task force. There were times that I would help fight fires in California and Idaho as they got out of control. But in today's day and age, outside of that, you know, our deployments I didn't really feel were necessarily serving the people of the United States. So it's a little weird sometimes when American citizens will stop and thank me for my service. It doesn't have quite the same meaning when I'm visiting friends in Lebanon and Iraq over the summer, where, you know, they remember me from being there and they thank me for their service, for my service. Because really in my time, in my deployments, I wasn't serving the citizens of the United States, I was serving citizens of the world.
Veterans Day is more than just getting a free steak at a restaurant. It's remembering that we have great freedoms here, things that other countries couldn't even imagine, freedoms that most of us take for granted. And we really need to look at what those freedoms are. When we say we have the freedom of speech, what does that really mean? What does that mean to other people? And why do those people want to move to our country so badly? It's because we really do have it pretty well here. And there are a lot of people we have to thank for that. And this is a great day where we can see those people. We can thank them for the sacrifices. And again, that's veterans and their families.
You know, I think things get kind of blurred. Like, for instance, on Memorial Day, a lot of people thank me for my service, but Memorial Day isn't about me at all, because I'm a veteran and we have Veterans Day to celebrate my service. Memorial Day is the one a lot of people misunderstand, and that's for people who've made the ultimate sacrifice. And like I said, I don't have any regrets about my time. I enjoyed it all, but I know some people that died in service to their country, and you know, one I know in particular, he was just an 18-year-old kid and his life was over. So I appreciate when people thank me for this service, but I really feel humbled by those people that made the ultimate sacrifice.
I think Veterans Day is for everybody. I mean, we do honor people who served, but I think I think Veterans Day is something that should honor just about everyone. When you think about the effort it takes to fight a war, to win a war, it's definitely not just the soldiers on the front lines that are doing it. There's so many people behind the scenes, family members back home keeping spirits up. And so Veterans Day, while I think it's right to appreciate those who served, I think Veterans Day is for everybody.
It's a time when our country should remember family members who have sacrificed their time and talent serving their country, okay? And most families have members in there, and oftentimes it's a holiday that's often forgotten. You have a lot of veterans that family members never say anything to. We used to have a Veterans Day program here. We would go out in front of the pavilion at the front door, and the band would play patriotic music. We would face the east and raise the flag, and the madrigals would sing "God Bless America," and the senior class and the madrigals and the band would all be out there. And then when we got this facility here, Steve Reed and the principal at that time decided that they didn't want to do that anymore. But Mrs. Stout, she remembers it. She was part of that years ago. But it's a special day. It's unlike Memorial Day, which we remember people who were killed fighting for their country. Veterans served, and they're still here. So it would be nice to show appreciation